You wanted to take the challenge. I'm just saying.
All right, good evening and welcome to the February 8th, 2024 regular meeting of San Diego Community Powers Community Advisory Committee. My name is Matthew Vasilakis, Chair of the committee and representative for the City of San Diego. We welcome members of the public, San Diego Community Powers staff, and our committee members joining us in person and online today. I want to thank SDCP staff for making this in-person meeting possible, and the City of San Diego for accommodating us today. I will now call the February 8th, 2024 regular meeting of the Community Advisory Committee of San Diego Community Power to order. I would like to note that Member Anderson is joining us virtually today under AB 2449. Could you please state for the record your reason for attending remotely and identify whether there is anyone 18 or over in the room with you, and if so, your relationship to that person?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Nobody is in the house, let alone the room, so I'm safe in that regard. And under AB 2449, I'm coming to you online today. I had eye surgery on Tuesday, and I'm not supposed to drive for a couple of more days, so that's why I'm coming to you. A number of years ago, I had torn retina, and this amazing procedure that I had done at Scripps Memorial drains the eyeball and takes out all the imperfections that was in that eye, and then they refill the eyeball. They put a gas bubble in it to make sure it's fully inflated, and that gas bubble prevents you from seeing everything until it dissipates in a few days. So that's why I'm here. It was very successful surgery. I'm good. I walked 3 miles today. I'm feeling in good health, and I'm glad to join you virtually.
Thank you, Committee Member Anderson. Please recover well.
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
And then just to clarify, we don't need to do anything for Committee Member Hammond? Right. Great. Thank you. Well, thank you. Our meeting clerk, Megan Wiegelman, will now call the roll.
Committee Member Anderson.
Present virtually.
Committee Member Price. Committee Member Emerson.
Present.
Committee Member Castaneda. Present. Committee Member Webb.
Present.
Committee Member Sandoval. Present. Committee Member Hammond. Present. Committee Member Jans.
Present.
Committee Member Sclavani.
Present.
Secretary Cazares. Vice Chair Harris.
Present.
Chair Vasilakis.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Right. We have quorum. Vice Chair Harris, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd now like to take a brief moment to provide a land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we are conducting our meeting is located in the traditional territory of the Kumeyaay people. We recognize the Kumeyaay Nation as the rightful stewards of this land and are committed to learning from and working with local Indigenous communities to honor their sovereignty, respect their cultures, and support their efforts to heal from intergenerational trauma and systemic injustices that continue to impact them today. Thank you to the Kumeyaay Nation and all the original stewards of this land. We look forward to working in collaboration to build a more just, sustainable, and resilient future for all. All right, we now have a quorum present. First up on the agenda is special presentations and introductions. And today we would like to give a warm welcome to Vera Tiagi, who is joining us today on the dais as General Counsel. Vera?
Hi, thank you very much. I started with SDCP a week ago today. I'm very excited to be here as General Counsel. I've been an environmental attorney for almost 20 years and worked with public agencies, air districts since 2010. So I have a practice built on general government law, I've had expertise in CEQA and the Clean Air Act and the Health and Safety Code. So I'm super excited to join this organization. I've been dedicated to transitioning towards zero emission technologies and clean energy. And to me, this is the other side of the envelope. So I'm very excited to join this team and expand my practice and work with all of you. And you will continue to see me in this capacity as your general counsel at future meetings. Nick is here to support me, and you will hopefully still see him, but also he won't be. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome. We also have Michelle Porras, who is joining SDPC staff as Senior Executive Assistant. Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Chair and committee members. Thank you for having me. My name is Michelle Porras. I'm the new Senior Executive Assistant supporting the C-suite, Karen, Jack, and Eric. My background for the last 14 years has been in public service, serving the city of San Diego and the mayor's office, where I was the director of scheduling. I am excited to be a part of this talented and dynamic team to help move forward our mission, vision, and goals. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Lastly, I want to acknowledge the Board of Directors' special recognition of Carolyn Schofield, our former CAC member representing the city of Chula Vista, honoring her with a proclamation during their January 18th, 2024 meeting. Thank you once again, Carolyn, for your service. That concludes the special presentations for today. All right, I will move us on to non-agenda public comment. We'll now take up non-agenda public comment. Written public comment submitted before the committee meeting are emailed to all CAC members as a reminder prior to committee meetings and will be posted on the website at the beginning of the meeting. Megan, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We do not.
Thank you. Are there any items to be withdrawn or reordered on the agenda?
There are not.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar contains items that can be approved as a package without discussion unless a CAC member requests that an item be removed for separate discussion and action. The CAC received staff reports for all items on the consent agenda, and staff provided an opportunity for questions and comments during briefings prior to the meeting. Today's consent agenda includes approval of the January 11th, 2024 CAC meeting minutes, 2, update on marketing, public relations, and local government affairs, 3, update on customer operations, 4, update on programs, and 5, approval of the 2024 CAC work plan. Megan, do we have any public comment on any of these items?
We do not.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to remove any item from the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing no objections or requests for removal, I will now turn it over to committee members for a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, so committee member Ayeta had a motion. Castaneda had a motion and
I'll second.
seconded by committee member Webb. Clerk, please call the vote.
Committee member Anderson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Emerson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Castaneda, how do you vote? Aye. Committee member Webb, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Sandoval, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Hammond, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Jans, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Sclafani, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Vasilakis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all board, committee members voting yes.
Great, motion passes. All right, we will move on to our regular agenda, starting with item 6. This item is presentation on mid-year budget amendment. I will now turn over to staff to present on this item. I will ask that before every presentation, staff clearly state their name and title for the record. I will also ask CAC members to please refrain from asking questions and making comments until the end of the presentation. And yeah, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Vasilakis, Vice Chair Harris, committee members, San Diego Community Power staff and public. I'm Dr. Eric Washington. I am the Chief Financial Officer at San Diego Community Power. In collaboration with the finance team, we are presenting this committee with to receive and file our mid-year budget review and recommended amendments that will ultimately go to the Finance and Risk Management Committee and then ultimately to the board for ratification. So with that, I'll pass it off to Christopher Doe for an introduction and presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and CAC members. I'm Chris Doe, Financial Analyst at San Diego Community Power. I'm here to present the mid-year budget amendment. for this fiscal year. So if we can start with the next slide. And we're going to be starting with the budget development timeline. SDCP's budget development for the next fiscal year starts this month, February, which we developed and then previewed in May and will ultimately be taken to the board for approval in June. SDCP's fiscal year begins July 1st of every year, and every February there is a mid-year review of the adopted budget. And if necessary, there's a budget amendment that is proposed to the board. So that colorful arrow there is actually where we're at with the mid-year budget review. We can move on to the next slide, please. So what we have here is a high-level summary of our adopted and amended budget. The gray boxes on the top represent the adopted budget, and the teal on the bottom half of the slide represents the proposed amendments. Starting from the left, we have net operating revenues, which is our gross revenues minus uncollectibles. This is a projection that was determined during our rate setting cycle. The middle boxes represent total expenses, which includes operating expense, debt service, and the capital investment plan. The right is the net position, which is revenues minus expenses, which shows SDCP as net positive in both versions of the budget. And if we move on to the next slide, what that all means here is the difference between the adopted versus proposed amended budget are shown here. Starting on the left, we have a $11.8 million difference in revenues. This is due to the rate that took effect February 1st. And the next in the middle, we have a $69.4 million increase in total expenses. This is due to the higher than expected energy costs of energy that was originally in the adopted budget that was presented. Lastly, to the far right, we are showing a decrease of $56.8 million in net position from the adopted budget. This is due to the total expenses increasing significantly more than revenues in the amended budget. Next slide. And lastly, the slide represents a side-by-side comparison of the adopted versus the amended budget. This is just a breakdown in the summary, but I'd like to point your attention to our non-energy cost. That's what San Diego Community Power as an organization can operationally control. It's the only cost we can manipulate and adjust, and we brought that down to about $3.4 million during this budget amendment process. And that concludes my presentation.
All right. Megan, do we have any public comment on the item?
We do not.
All right, thank you. Well, I will now turn it over to CAC members for comments. As a reminder, each member will have up to 5 minutes to ask questions and make comments. Who'd like to go? Committee Member Emerson?
Yes, could you go back to the last slide and so the less uncollectibles means, remind me of what that means. The people are paying the bills, or what does that mean? Less uncollectibles?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Emerson. That uncollectibles are what we project that our customers may not be able to make those payments. So that represents what we may not collect once we bill our customers.
But there is a program to help people with if they have a budget problem that.
Well, I know our services team, they're the experts in that area, and there are a number of programs where customers can actually sign up for to get some forms of relief from those payments. But I would certainly yield to our customer service and programs team to articulate that more precisely.
But this is the anticipated at this time for the whole year.
So that's what we budgeted for the amended budget, for the remainder of the fiscal year as it relates to the mid-year review and proposed amendments that will go before the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other? Vice Chair Harris?
I probably know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is it $3.4 million in reductions Does any of that impact in any significant way community programs or staffing?
I'll have to do a little further digging into precisely what those adjustments were. However, some of it was due to, a larger portion of it was attributed to the timing of staffing, not necessarily impacting the budgeted amount for staffing, but the timing of bringing those positions in-house to San Diego Community Power. The other, there's other components of the non-energy operating budget where we were able to realize some savings for various reasons, but I'd be happy to circle back with more details on that for you, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, if I may, there's no negative impact.
Very good.
Committee Member Sandoval?
I have a question. What's the biggest expense in the non-energy bracket of the budget?
Professional services. That's going to be in the general administration portion. Professional services is our largest non-energy cost at the moment. So contracts, professional service agreements, that's the highest that we have outside of energy.
Of course. Any other questions or comments from the committee? I think that's all we've got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you so much. We'll get the report out. All right, well, I will move us on to regular agenda item number 7. Update on load management standards and compliance plan. I will turn it over to staff to introduce themselves and provide the presentation.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, team members and public. Thank you, Aaron. Stephen Gunther, Senior Regulatory Analyst with SDCP. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Aaron, Senior Rates and Analyst. Next slide, please. So I'll just be providing a quick bit of background before Aaron takes us through our draft plan. But this is for the load management standards, which is under the auspices of the California Energy Commission. So since 1978, the Energy Commission has held authority over the load management standards, which focus on strategies to shape electricity load, so changing when people are using their energy. Last April, the CC amended the existing load management standards, adding new requirements for utilities and large CCAs, which includes SDCP. The updates mostly focus on using rates and price signals to encourage customers to shift energy usage. Next slide. So specifically, the requirements outlined here are developing retail electricity rates that change at least hourly. So much more granular than our current time of use, but it'd be a dynamic rate that changes hourly to meet various state goals, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing reliability on the grid. And we need to apply, the requirement is that they apply the utility or CCA, these rates to their governing board. So for San Diego Community Power, that's our board of directors. We also need to maintain rates in a new central repository, both existing time-dependent rates and any new time-dependent rates. And then lastly, establish public outreach and education for customers about these new strategies that are getting rolled out. Slide, please. So the load management standards also require that utilities and CCAs develop a compliance plan that outlines how they're going to meet each of these goals and requirements that are outlined. And the timeline here kind of shows the various requirements and their deadlines as they're currently written in the load management standards. So the compliance plan, which is the yellow box, it's due April 1st to be taken to our board. We'll be taking the draft plan to our board later this month, and that's what Aaron will be speaking to in a little more detail. And then the other deadlines here outlined the various aspects of the load management standards that I mentioned. earlier, including a list of cost-effective flexibility programs, submitting those dynamic rates I spoke to a moment ago, and offering one of those rates by July 2027. So compliance plans are required to evaluate each of these requirements and the timelines associated with them based on cost effectiveness, technological feasibility, and equity. And the CCAs have the ability to delay or modify compliance based on that evaluation. And with that background, I will pass it to Aaron.
Thank you, Stephen, for the background as well as the requirements. So I want to focus a little bit more on our roadmap and how SDCP will get to the requirements that the CC has set out. So in terms of a lot of SDCP's initiatives and projects already in progress in terms of meeting the intent as well as the goals laid out by the CEC's load management standard amendments, including addressing shifting energy use from on-peak to off-peak times. So in terms of programs in progress, SDCP already has established the Community Clean Energy Innovation Grant Program, which is on the agenda tonight as well. The 100% renewable energy target goal, we already have time-dependent rates in place, as well as ongoing established customer education outreach campaigns around all of those initiatives. So in terms of tackling the two main requirements from the CC's LMS requirements, it's really the dynamic rate piece as well as the list of cost-effective low flexibility programs. So in terms of the dynamic rates, we are right now in a bit of a waiting period to evaluate results and data that will come out of dynamic rate pilots that are being run across the state, mostly by the investor-owned utilities. SDG&E's dynamic rate pilot is a little bit behind compared to SCE's and PG&E's. So we would like to see customer reactions as well as acceptance to dynamic rates, which are a bit more complex than time of use. And in terms of the low flexibility programs, in the past 2 or so months, SDCP staff have already presented the design as well as the timing of implementing those low flexibility programs. So we will be putting those out. And tonight we also have the paired and storage program on the agenda as well. That would be part of or under the flexibility program umbrella. And in terms of the programs, we will evaluate those program results for cost effectiveness once we have the data, once those programs are established. And then to kind of wrap all that up, it's really reevaluating the rate and program designs as well as the results. So it'll be an ongoing process, and we will put all that into the next update of the plan. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, it's really submitting this compliance plan for board review and approval in the next board meeting in 2 weeks. And then we will submit the compliance plan once approved to the CEC before April 1st, 2024. And there are 2 additional requirements in terms of the plan's administration. It's annual reports to the CEC starting in 2025. Demonstrating plan implementation, and then reviewing the plan at least once every 3 years if there are substantial changes. That concludes our presentations. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Megan, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Thank you. Well, I will now turn it over to CAC members for comments. Member Sclafani, sorry.
It's okay. Question, do you expect that the dynamic rates would apply to commercial and industrial customers as well as residential?
For the load management standards, it's only required for residential customers.
And then, did I understand correctly that they would go live on January 1st of 27?
It would be voluntary participation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Making that clear, the requirements just require that we offer a rate that's dynamic. There's not any intention that this would be a default rate or people are forced onto this rate.
Committee Member Sandoval?
For the time dependent rates, is that gonna differ from the program that SDNG has? The flex times, be any different, or is it nothing like that?
Fully aware with exactly which you're referring to, but this is a fairly new rate design. SDG does not currently have a dynamic rate that changes at least hourly. They do have various rates that are time dependent, as does SDCP, but this is moving to a much more granular, think potentially changing every 15 minutes, but at least hourly. So this is a new rate structure for the.
Wow. So it's not gonna be the same like every single day. It's gonna be changing.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that a little more. So currently time of use rates are in on peak, off peak, super off peak periods, right? So on peak, you have 4 to 9 where energy costs are the most expensive. So dynamic rates will move it so that the rates will change at least on an hourly basis to even better match the changing underlying energy costs. Usually the implementation is paired with a automation system. Otherwise, it's very difficult to manually track when energy prices are changing on an hourly basis.
Committee Member Emerson?
Yes, earlier, well, I have a couple questions, but earlier you mentioned that San Diego Gas and Electric was behind compared to PG&E and Southern E. What was that?
In terms of rolling out their dynamic rate pilot.
Their pilot.
I see.
Okay, and that's related to this dynamic load management as well?
Related to the dynamic rate, yes.
Okay, so they're coming up with, so this load management plan, is it only for generation or is it also for distribution charges?
It's only for generation.
Only for generation, okay. And I know that under some of the prior programs, under Power Your Drive, implementations were, installations were put in by San Diego Gas and Electric, as well as CPUC approved setups for EV charging. They had, usually a lot of times it was either it was like a time of use, like Saturdays and Sundays had special rates because most businesses may be winding down versus Monday through Friday, but also they had something like the next day. If today was very sunny, then the next day would they assume that weather was going to be similar, so they could have rates that were much lower because of the sun is shining. So as part of this load management strategy and incentives to people, will you include some incentives for EV charging? Rates that would encourage people to charge their EVs when the sun is shining?
It's a possibility as long as it's
as long as it's residential, okay. And that would be built into your plan. When you develop the plan, you would emphasize these type of.
I think it's something that we can look at as we are designing rates. So in terms of plan, it doesn't have to be that specific, but as we're designing these dynamic rates, it's definitely something we can.
Okay, thank you.
Committee Member for Vice Chair Harris.
I wanted to ask about price signals because you mentioned both the dynamic rates and price signals. How does the price signals, what is that and how does it play in? Or is it part of rates?
Yeah, so the price signal would be embedded into the rate itself. So if the rate has different prices, then people are responding to that price signal within the rate. But the load management standards also have the program aspect, so if you don't go with a dynamic rate, you can have cost-effective programs that use prices to encourage when people are using their energy. So often the price signal is a part embedded into the rate. That's just the price of the rate is when people are gonna use their electricity to respond to that, but because there's also the program aspect, that's kind of why it was listed as two separate things.
And in the SDG&E pilot, do you happen to know how SDG&E will communicate the price changes to the customers that are participating? Like, is there, like right now, I know if from 4 to 9, I'm going to pay a higher rate. Under a dynamic system of rate changes, how will I know when to shift my load?
Yeah, we can't speak to the pilot because it hasn't actually rolled out yet, and that's kind of what Aaron referenced, and that SDG&E is a little behind there, and that pilot has been currently paused. So it's not, we don't know exactly how it's going to be designed, and that's part of why our compliance plan delays some of this until we can see data from those pilots to better understand how this works. But until we can see the results of those pilots, it's really hard to determine if they're effective or not.
Is there technology that will enable customers to respond to those prices?
Yeah, a lot of the intention is to use automated technology, so a smart thermostat or even a smart plug, and anything with smart in front of it, refrigerators, what have you. So the idea is it's more of a set it and forget it, that you could attach your device to the rate and then it receives the signals and responds to it. So you're not constantly turning your lights on and off.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lucas. I'm the Senior Director of Data Analytics and Customer Operations. In addition to what my colleagues have articulated, the dynamic prices or the dynamic pricing framework isn't something necessarily new in our industry. Direct access customers predominantly utilize dynamically priced service offerings, so it's something that exists already. But again, the one biggest difference in what is being asked as a function of the load management standards is the fact that the direct access customers tend to be commercial and or industrial, so larger customers as opposed to residential customers. And these customers have very sophisticated energy managers or energy program managers that can effectively run operations on an automated basis that align operation scheduling, if you will, down to the hour that the rate will be most beneficial. And so as part of the various workshops that staff has been a part of as it relates to dynamically priced rate offerings, there has been an articulation of a concern around residential customers, right? Tracking or trying to track rates that will change on an hourly basis. And that has been also part of the feedback that, a lot of the stakeholders, particularly the residential advocates, if you will, pointed out that, hey, some of what is being proposed is feasible, but there has to be a technological consideration first and foremost before you can actually implement these rates that are dynamic in nature. So just wanted to have that additional color.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate the additional context. Committee Member Hammond.
Hi, thank you. I had two questions. One, are any NEM customers included in the pilot? If you're aware of that, I guess I'll let you answer that first.
Thank you for the question. The real-time pricing pilot by SDG&E is currently on hold. They do actually have a vehicle grid integrated rate that is dynamic in nature. That is currently available. However, most of our customers under the VGI rate are actually ineligible to participate in the CCA or in SDCP service simply because most of that infrastructure is wholly owned by SDG&E at the moment.
Okay, and then I had seen from when the solar industry went from net metering 1.0 to 2.0 and time of use, it was so confusing for consumers. And now there's net billing tariff, which is way more confusing. And then adding in real-time pricing, I'm just wondering, are you speaking with the top clean energy software companies like Energy Toolbase to ensure that they, once SDCP is getting ready to roll this out, will adequately be able to offer the data for solar companies to be designing proposals accurately, to be sharing those with consumers?
That's actually a very good question. So I think what the CEC is envisioning, and Stephen and Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, is the fact that there will be a single wide state tool. Obviously, right now we do have the database that they've stood up for MIDAs. And the intent and the target goal there is for all load serving entities. So CCAs, including SDCP, IOUs, including SCG, need to upload all of their existing rates currently in effect into this single database. And then multiple users, so technology firms that can effectively utilize that single database to run run programs or energy usage programmatically via an algorithm. I think that's what is being contemplated. There are a few tweaks that will likely need to be made to make the platform more robust, especially as it relates to residential customer use. I don't think we're quite there yet, but that's my personal opinion. But I think that is the way of the future. And I think in terms of the broader end game, I think that is what the regulators are thinking and trying to accomplish.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and SDCP is thinking ahead and anticipating these changes, so we are weaving into our request for proposals where it's applicable in terms of programs, at least in the low flexibility programs, kind of the interaction and inclusion of these technologies.
Member Sclafani.
I would just like to share a mildly embarrassing anecdote here. In this room, I think most of us are familiar with time of use rates, and it's more expensive, so let me not do my laundry during these hours or whatnot. But when we look at the time of use rates, the difference between off-peak and on-peak for residential, it's negligible, right? And I found that doing my laundry whenever I want, makes no difference ultimately in the fluctuation of my bill. It's like the principle is, well, let's shift the load, but the practicality is really doesn't matter. So I'm going to do what I want. And I could only imagine with real-time pricing or hourly pricing, when you have ratepayers that are outside of this room that don't live in this world and have this discussion where it's like a total mystery of how the bill is calculated, whether they should do anything. So I guess my point is, like, alongside and parallel with the technology and the data systems and the products, I might suggest some polling of the communities to say, like, well, if it changed your bill by $1, would you care? If it changed it by $100, would you care? Like, at what point does it actually result in behavior change? Right. So comment and embarrassing story.
Thank you for that. And I'd say that is why SDCP's plan is kind of taking the slower approach of pilots, understanding what works, what doesn't, reaching out to the community rather than rolling out these rates immediately. So the point well taken. Thank you.
Member Emerson.
So let me get this comment straight. You're encouraging people to do laundry during the peak time? I don't know. I would kind of disagree, because I think it's important that everybody doesn't do all of their loads on the peak time. I'm not, and the air conditioning is probably the highest load during the summer. We definitely want to keep that down if possible. But yeah, with your family life, you have to balance everybody's wives and kids' demands and make everybody happy, but trying to, I think, shift the load is an important thing that we can all try to do collectively will have an impact.
Any other comments? All right, this is a receiving file. Appreciate it. We'll move on to regular agenda item 8. Thank you, staff. Item 8, community grant program ad hoc end of committee report. I will turn over to Member Castaneda to provide the report.
Thank you, Chair Vasilakis. So the committee grant program ad hoc committee met on January 29, 2024. Had the rollout of the second round of community grants, which staff will discuss with the CAC today. Members appointed during our last CAC regular meeting included David Harris, Tony Scafani, and myself, Aida Castaneda. The committee worked closely with SDCP staff to learn about the fiscal year 2013 to 24 program details and provide feedback on the evaluation criteria and recommend outreach opportunities to promote the grant program. Specific feedback provided to staff included allowing organizations to apply together, understand how many eligible organizations within each member agency there are, consider providing applicants as well as capacity challenges for smaller organizations to apply, including higher educational institutions and community colleges as an area of focus in future rounds, and considering equity and geographic distribution during grant allocation. Thank you so much. That concludes my report.
Excellent, thank you. Megan, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Thank you, Megan. I will now turn over to CAC members for comments. All right.
I just thought it might be helpful to know when the next round will roll out, and because I think it's fairly soon, and a lot of organizations are going to be happy to learn that there's a lot more money this round, close to $1 million, I believe. So
quite impressive.
Oh,
Member Emerson?
Yeah, another question, just I know the first grants, they had a whole category for evaluation. And is that something you guys are reviewing and maybe tweaking how the evaluation is used? You're just going to use this, what was done before?
I think we're saying that there was before.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions from committee members? All right, well, this is a receiving file. We'll move on to our next item. Regular agenda item number 9. Update on community grant program. I will turn it over to staff to provide the update. As a reminder, please refrain from asking questions or making comments until the end of the staff presentation. Staff, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Allison Spurlock and I'm a senior program associate.
Hi, everyone. Nelson Millie. I'm a program manager.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you again for everyone that participated on the ad hoc and reviewed the program guidelines with us. Tonight I'll be presenting on those guidelines that we discussed. And as David just mentioned, we are planning on opening the next program cycle in late February, so just a few weeks away. And so as a reminder, the goal of the community grant program is to provide funding to community organizations to implement projects and programs that relate to clean energy. And on the next slide, we officially launched the community grant program last March, and funding was provided to organizations last June. And as a reminder, the San Diego Foundation administers this program for us. We initially only had a contract with them for 1 year. And so after the first round was underway, we went out and put an RFP out to solicit a program administrator, and SDF was selected again to serve as the program administrator. And so they will help us administer the program for the next few years. And then once we had our new contract with them last fall, we began to develop the program guidelines and make some refinements. And so something exciting for this next cycle that is new is that we have an additional program partner, and they are called Calpine Energy Solutions. And they provide back office support to us and many other CCAs. And so in their contract, there is a clause that states that they will give back 3% of their annual service invoices to community organizations. And so we're really excited that they're going to be adding that funding to our next program cycle, which is one of the reasons why the budget was able to increase to over $1 million. So for the funding, SDCP, our board approved budget is $500,000 for this fiscal year. And then Calpine, we are estimating about $500,000 based on just under 2 years of service invoices, so it could be lower in the future, but for this time, 500. And then another thing that I wanted to point out is the San Diego Foundation, as our program administrator, is also seeking additional funding sources. You might remember that the last cycle they were able to contribute some funding, and so that could be an opportunity for additional funding again. And then this is an overview of just the high-level program guidelines. And so we anticipate awarding upwards of $1 million. And because the budget is higher, we are also increasing the grant sizes. And so the grant sizes will be between $25,000 and $100,000. And I want to highlight that due to the larger grant sizes, one of the changes that we made is that we are giving organizations the option to expend the grants within 24 months instead of 12. Just to give them more time to be more equitable and give them more time to ramp up their projects with larger grants, and also to foster deeper relationships with organizations that are doing great work in our communities. And then this is just a high-level overview of the program timing. And so we plan on opening the application on February 26th, in just a couple weeks. It will be open for just about 6 weeks compared to 4 weeks last year. And then applications will be reviewed in April and May. And we anticipate selecting and announcing grants by June and holding another award event. And then the grant reporting would conclude at the end of the grant period. So about 2 years later with the 24-month grants. And then an overview of the eligibility. So this is just the part 1 of the eligibility. This is the exact same as last year. And so applications must be led by a nonprofit with 501c3 status. Applicants must have proven experience serving community members. The proposed project must relate to clean energy, and it must serve our customers. And then the second part of the eligibility is those focus areas. And so these are also pretty similar to last year. These initial focus areas were informed by the community needs assessment that we did for our community power plan. And so we kept these pretty similar. But the one that I wanted to highlight is the second bullet. We added a specific focus area that calls out energy-focused educational programming for youth. And we added that because it aligns with another goal that we identified in our community power plan to foster energy awareness for K-12 and youth. And this is also another way that we can potentially expand the reach of the program to organizations that do educational programming, but not currently in the clean energy space. And then this is just a high-level overview of the evaluation criteria. This is also pretty similar to last year, with a couple changes just in how things are worded, but the evaluation committee will be reviewing proposals based on funding priority, alignment and project design, feasibility, community served, and then also impact and growth. And then lastly, this is the promotion that we have planned for the next cycle. And so this year, as San Diego Foundation is creating a standalone webpage for the grant opportunity where everything will live, where organizations can go directly to apply. And then we also have a webpage that we will be updating that will direct people to SDF's website. And then this year, San Diego Foundation did a pre-recorded webinar that's going to overview the grant details, application process, and frequently asked questions. And I want to note that they are also available during the application period to provide technical assistance to organizations. And then both of our teams are planning on doing a press release, newsletter stories, emails, social media, and outreach to organizations. So let me know if we're missing anything or if you have any other recommendations. And then on the next slide, over the next few weeks, we will continue preparing the application and outreach materials before we launch it. And we also are going to put together some materials to share with you all when the grant opportunity opens, and we would love your help getting the word out to your communities. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Appreciate the update. Megan, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
All right, I'll turn it over to CAC members for comments. Yes. Remember Emerson?
Yeah, so in your outreach, there were community members or organizations that submitted last time but didn't get a grant. So do you still have that list of those people? Will you be sending them notification of the new?
Yes, yeah, that's a great suggestion. We do have the organizations that applied last year, and we are planning on doing targeted outreach for the program that will include all of the organizations that applied last year.
Okay, great. And then if you could go back a few slides, you were showing the bullets. And you were saying the new one was added. Could you go to that page again? Yeah, this is,
Focus areas, yeah.
and so, with a particular focus for youth, is that the part that was added?
The whole bullet is
Whole
new.
bullet.
Yeah, so last time it was just the first bullet, which is increasing overall energy literacy, but we wanted to specifically call out educational programming for youth, and we didn't want to limit it at K through 12 either, because youth can go
Okay.
beyond that stuff.
And then if you go to the next slide, and in the scoring, where would that be included in the scoring? Which category or criteria would that?
It would be included in the first one, the funding priority alignment and program design, and so the projects have to align with one of the focus areas.
Okay. And then that's the total points. So that's total 50 points altogether. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Harris?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment staff on excellent program design. And I'm really excited that the grants will be larger and that there's a longer period of time to implement, because a lot of organizations are small and they don't necessarily have a lot of experience launching these sort of programs. So I think it'll really enlarge the playing field and bring more people to the table. So, and I did want to ask about partnering. Do you anticipate that some organizations nonprofits will partner in order to apply, and does that help them in the grant process?
Yes, partnerships are encouraged, and last year we did have 1 or 2 collaborative proposals, so it is possible and encouraged.
Great.
Wonderful.
Can I ask one more?
Commissioner
I don't know, maybe if I missed it, but there was supposed to be a report on how the first grants did. And they were supposed to submit reports. Did I miss a presentation on that?
No, they did have a more informal mid-year report that was due at the end of last year, but we're still waiting on some organizations to submit it, so we don't have
I see.
to share now, but we are planning on sharing the final report, which is just a couple months away.
Okay, thank you.
A summary of that, yeah, at the end of the grant cycle.
Thank you.
Committee Member Sandoval?
I have a question. When you guys are choosing who gets the grants, do you guys take into consideration like from a certain city, organization from a certain thing? I'm just like worried. Imperial Beach, small population, a lot of organizations from there. If some big organizations from San Diego get all the money, we really don't benefit from it. But we're telling the community, oh, we're helping out the community. If they ask me like, oh, okay, how are they helping IB? What can I tell them? Like, what organization have we helped? How do we have the same chances as everybody else to get help by San Diego Community Power?
Yeah, there wasn't specifically an organization last year that was specific for Imperial Beach, but there were quite a few South Bay organizations. But yes, we do take geography into account, and it is our goal to like spread out the grants if possible, but it's just hard to tell until we get the applications. But it's something that's definitely in the discussion for the evaluation committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I'll just say I really appreciate the hard work and focus, especially on fine tuning the equity components for this program. And I also really appreciate the partnership with San Diego Foundation and Calpine contributing those additional funds. And I encourage folks that if, your jurisdiction, the city that you're in, if you have any organizations that you really want to elevate, make sure you do that peer-to-peer outreach. And once we get that communications package from SDCP staff, we can easily deploy ourselves to encourage our community organizations to apply. And yeah, I really appreciate all the hard work on this.
Thank you.
All right, this is a file and receive. We'll move on to regular agenda item 10, which is our final item on the regular agenda, update on residential solar and storage program. I will turn over to staff to provide the update.
Great.
Okay, hi, I'm Emily Fisher. I'm the Senior Program Manager on the programs team here at SDCP, and I'm beyond excited to be able to present this to you tonight. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So San Diego Community Power is launching this program really to support with the transition from net energy metering to net billing tariff, which has a massive impact on the industry. And we're already starting to see it with layoffs and just down in sales in general. And so we wanted to design a program to maximize the benefits across the board for our customers, for the industry, and for the grid. And so we've taken that into consideration, and hopefully you'll have a positive response to this. Let's see. So we'll go into a refresher if you want to go to the next slide on net billing tariff. So this is easier if I have a mouse, so sorry about that. But if you're looking at it, the gray box is the daily consumption for an average customer that we have. And then as you see, the bottom axis is the hours in the day. So as the sun starts to rise, the solar starts to generate for what the site is consuming. And then around 7:30 or so in the morning, the solar starts overproducing. And so in a normal situation, that would go back to the grid, but with net billing tariff, it makes sense for it to go to the battery so that you can use it during your on-peak period later in the day when rates are higher. And so as you go through the day, during that time, solar is completely generating for the home, and then excess is going to the battery. And then at around 4 or 5 p.m., the solar starts going down, the site starts taking from the grid again, and then during a 2-hour period, the battery is being dispatched. For 2 hours, we have it set at 80% in this example, but you can see that a lot of it is being exported back to the grid during that time when ACC export values are a lot higher, along with the customer not having to pay for that on-peak period when rates are obviously a lot higher. And so with this model, the point is to show how net billing tariff strongly influences the adoption of batteries to shift that excess solar to the battery during the on-peak period, but also the mindset on dispatching your battery on a daily basis. I think a lot of customers have their battery for resiliency, where you can see massive impacts to your utility bill if you switch to using it on a daily basis for new customers that are going to be under NPT. So you can go to the next slide. So now we'll get into program details a bit. The program goals, the primary goal we have is to continue installing solar and storage throughout our service territory. So the primary goal for this program is specifically for single-family homes, and we do have a goal of 50% of those incentives going to the communities of concern. And then additionally, we want to be able to support our power procurement team with providing clean energy that's reliable during the on-peak hours when the demand is higher. And that'll also support the local infill goal. And then other goals are really to leverage non-SDCP incentives in addition to ours to maximize the benefit for the customers and being able to overcome these upfront costs. And then the last one is to build strong relationships with our customers and the industry. And I think that one is so valuable because we've been learning that we just really need to continue to grow within the industry, making sure they're aware of who we are and why their customers should stay on SDCP rates. So you're gonna go to the next slide, thanks. So we did have two industry workshops in January, one on the 22nd and the 24th, and that was really to obtain feedback from the industry at large. So we had 72 attendees in total across the two workshops. It was made up of installers, solar storage providers, aggregators, and battery manufacturers. And overall, we did find that about a third of the people attending the workshop were somewhat unfamiliar with us. So we do have plans of hopefully partnering with the California Solar and Storage Association, or CALSA, and potentially other partnerships as well to make sure that we're engaging within the industry. And then overall, we received positive feedback on the program. It's just a lot of questions right now in terms of clarification on some things, but overall, we've received very positive feedback and expecting potential feedback from CALSA and maybe some other stakeholders. Go to the next slide. So in terms of customer eligibility, they must be an active SDCP residential customer. They must own a single family home where the battery storage is going to be installed. The system obviously must be interconnected and permitted, along with the battery being fully charged from solar. And then right now, we don't want the battery participating in any other VPP or grid services types of programs, although we have had some conversations with the CEC about potential dual enrollment with another more emergency type of program. And then only new battery systems will be eligible currently. We do want to be able to offer a part of this incentive to customers that already have batteries, but just right now, it'll be just available for new batteries. All right, so then in terms of the incentives, so we'll go through the market rate column first. There's not going to be we're proposing there's not going to be a solar update or upfront incentive.
but we do want to have a storage upfront incentive of $350 per kWh based on the data sheet's usable nameplate capacity. That typically is around 20 to 30% or so of the overall cost. And then additionally, having a storage performance incentive that'll be 10 cents per kWh based on actual battery performance during a 2-hour daily dispatch that aligns with the on-peak periods and also aligns with those high ACC export values in September. So the customer is able to benefit from those credits. And so that would be a daily dispatch. And then we would allow for the customers or the installers to essentially select how much of the battery is going to be enrolled for the summer or winter seasons. So they can maximize their contribution of their battery, or they could go down to only 50% and using the other, 40 to 45% of their battery during the other 3 on-peak hours. So there's really ways of optimizing the incentive based on the customer and all of the different features that can impact how they can maximize the benefits of having a battery. And, keep on that side. And that performance incentive will be paid for 10 years, which is typically like the life of a battery. And then on the far right column, the CARE FARA in our communities of concern, we're proposing a solar upfront incentive of up to $450 per kWac. That's typically around 10 to 15% of the solar cost. But we wanted to include that just because a lot of those customers don't necessarily fall into our DAC/SASH potential program, which covers solar. So we did want to have a little bit of an added incentive for the solar side. And it's up to, because if they can leverage DAC/SASH or the San Diego Solar Equity Program, we would like them to pursue that first. And then we can provide the additional $450 per kWac if needed. And then the storage upfront incentive would be up to $500 per kWh, again, based off of the spec sheet's usable nameplate capacity. And that's typically between 30 to 40% of the overall cost. And it's an up to, because if the customers are eligible for SDCP equity or resiliency, we would urge them to leverage that incentive first. And then we would cover any remaining costs up to that $500 per kWh. So if they're eligible for SDCP equity or resiliency, they often won't see a cost for the storage side of the project. And then again, that same 10 cents per kWh for the performance incentive. Now you can go to the next slide. So the landscape in the solar storage industry right now is a bit messy. So we do want to put some safeguards into place to make sure that this program is being messaged to our customers properly and consistently. So we're thinking about having an online sales training to ensure that messaging around the program, and that would be targeted towards sales staff. And then at the end of the training, our thoughts is to have an authentication provided to allow them access to check for customer eligibility and the incentive level based on if they're CARE or FARA or communities of concern. And then in terms of installers, we will need them to apply for this program just to ensure customer satisfaction and safety. So that application is, still in the works, but we want to include basic contact information, making sure they have a local address, they have the proper licenses, they've been in business for, a certain number of years and have done a number of storage installations, liability insurance, understanding what industry or trade certifications they may have, and then payment information and a self-certification, essentially saying that they are going to do what they can to make it a successful delivery for our customers. And you can go to the next slide. And then in terms of the battery requirements, the primary thing we're going to need them to be able to do is operationalize the program and sharing the battery performance data with us on a monthly basis for that term. And so with that, they can share it to us through a virtual power plant-like application. Often they have a database that's in the background that has all the customers' performance data, so they could grant us access to that, or filling in a CSV Excel file that has the performance data, and we would automatically calculate the incentive from that. And then in terms of the actual battery products, we would want them to meet most of the, California program requirements from that perspective, being that they have a round trip efficiency of 80% or greater. They've been UL 1973 and UL 9540 certified. The inverters have been, 1741 and 1741 supplemental A certified and have a warranty of 10 years or greater. You can go to the next page or slide.
Okay, so this one's a big one. This is basically walking through the customer process, but I'll try to simplify it. So a salesperson goes out to a customer site, they are interested, they'll have them sign the contract that also would include the agreement for this program. And then they would submit that to us, we would review it, approve it, and notify both the customer and the installer that the project has been approved, assuming they're approved. And then, the process would continue for the installer to do proper permitting and interconnection and procuring the materials and scheduling the install. Then the installation would be completed. Final documentation would be submitted to us, which would include the PTO letter and photos and potentially some other documentation we're considering. And then that upfront incentive would be processed within 30 days of PTO to be paid out to the contractor with the expectation that they would deliver most of that incentive to the customer through either, reducing the overall upfront cost or minimizing their monthly loan or PPA payments. And then additionally, with the installation being complete, we would notify the OEM or the battery manufacturer about that customer participating in the program. They would submit the battery data to us monthly, or we would access it through their VPP-like platform and calculate the incentive, and that would be paid to the customer on an annual basis. So they would be receiving a check in the mail from us for a 10-year period. And then in terms of the timeline, we're finalizing program details right now and also obtaining feedback from the industry across the board. And we're hoping to get the guidelines finalized in March or April and start enrolling installers and battery manufacturers in the program at that point, and then launching the program in early summer.
Thank you. Okay. The presentation, lots of wonderful information. Megan, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we didn't.
Thank you. Well, turn over to CAC members for any comments or questions. Committee member Castaneda?
Excited about this program. It's gonna be a lot of good stuff coming up. I do have a question in regards to how this could, or if it would apply to nonprofit organizations that own housing complexes. Could they apply for something like this? How would that, how could that benefit low-income communities the most?
So right now, the program is focused on single-family homes, but we do have hopes of expanding it into the multifamily and commercial sector.
Okay.
Committee member Anderson? Oh, you're muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it strikes me that for even very educated people, that process that looks to me to be very complex and convoluted. I'm not a low income person and I have a PhD, but when I look at how daunting that flow chart is, it makes me wonder whether many people will actually ever apply for this, or it will do very much good, because there not only is it a complex set of steps, but they have to be timed almost perfectly. You have to anticipate putting in a system. You have to put in the system, and all of this has to be done in exactly that order. I guess I'm looking for responses. When considering this, did you consider that this process might be overly complex? Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. In general, that process is what most installers are going through anyways. The only really addition to that process is the application and the documentation that needs to be submitted to us. But we kept it at a minimum to minimize that impact for like the hurdles that installers are gonna have to go through with submitting these applications. So the application, we're hoping can just be included within the customer agreement that they have signed with the customer and the installer provider. And that way, there's no extra step. It's just another signature that's within the contract they're already signing. And then in terms of the post installation, it's just an email they can forward to us. So it's relatively simple. And in terms of the battery manufacturing data that we're looking to collect, we are going to require those manufacturers to sign an agreement with us to say that they're willing to do this. And we have a massive interest in that in general right now, participating in programs for battery manufacturers, just because it's a great way of selling their solution within our service territory. And then, Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go
Oh, I
ahead.
was just gonna add one more thing. We also do want to potentially partner with our city agencies to do some type of co-sponsored webinars or workshops in person. Educate them on solar and storage in general because of just some of the impacts that are happening to our customers from just sloppy sales that's happening. So we do want to make sure that we're supportive of that and educating them as well.
Thanks. The other question I have, and first tell me if my assumption is correct. They don't get a discounted system. They get reimbursed after they've made the capital cost of installing a battery system, correct?
So we're actually proposing that the upfront incentive is delivered to the installer or the provider so that it's discounted off of the rate the customer is paying.
Good,
So that's
thank
the way
you.
we structured it for that purpose.
Yeah, I think that's better because I don't think, most low-income people are going to spring for a $10,000 battery system without some upfront help. So thank you for that.
Totally, of course.
Member Sandoval?
Oh, yeah, I have two questions. First one is why only single family homes? What about multiple family homes, condos?
This is just the start for it. So we do plan on opening it up to multifamily, but it just started with the single family.
Okay, yeah. So, and then, well, 69% of Imperial Beach are renters. So I'm wondering if only owners can apply for this or tenants can as well?
Likely in that scenario, we would need the owner to apply for it because it would be on their site and permanently installed, but they could propose it to their owner for adding it.
And then the owner would be responsible for a certain amount of money?
Yeah, like we probably have to work through that and consider it. But it might be up to kind of the owner and the renter in terms of who's leveraging what.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Member Johns?
How long do you think it will take to achieve a 15% infill contribution to the total load?
So this program specifically won't contribute a ton, but we're looking at around 10 megawatts right now. And so it'll support it, but that's more of a question for the power procurement team.
So 15%, this program is nowhere near 15%.
No, it's a small portion of that.
But you do plan many similar programs to promote. So how do you get to, I guess I'm a little confused now why you presented the 15% infill number.
If I may, excuse me, we've got a number of programs and RFPs and solicitations out there to fill that 15% requirement. This is just one of those.
And so how long, again, I'll ask for all those programs to achieve 15%.
We don't currently have a time frame on that, but we've got a number of initiatives happening that'll fill that quota.
Would you be thinking that you would go beyond 15% with success on the current quiver of programs you have?
I think we're open to achieving more than 15%. We have to see how things go, but we've got a number of initiatives that are teed up to.
Thank you.
Sure.
We'll go with Committee Member Hammond and then Scalpani.
Hi, I can understand why a homeowner would need to be the lead on this, but organizations can go solar signing the contract as long as they have the property owner's permission. It might help more renters have access if the renters themselves can take ownership of it with the homeowner signing off. I do understand the goal is probably for storage to be running for many years, so perhaps if the renter moves out, then the homeowner can take responsibility. Because some homeowners probably don't want to take the steps of doing the paperwork just to get it installed initially. So I would consider, or I'd recommend considering allowing the renter to take that first step. And then I also would love to see this expanded to multifamily affordable housing units, perhaps projects that already have the SOMA rebate and solar. It would be interesting to figure out how to allow those tenants to see savings from storage.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that feedback and definitely want to consider the renting owner relationship for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Stefani?
A couple points here. So I don't have my 3-ring binder from Community Power, but the 15% number, if my memory serves, and it probably is not reliable, was the goal for infill generation, I think by 2035.
Right. Okay.
So it was it's a long-term organizational goal. And this is one program that contributes towards that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Going back to this item, for what it is of a solar and storage program, I think this is very well thought out. So excellent work.
Yeah.
Some of the thoughts that come up are sort of parallel or perpendicular to this program. So take that positive feedback on the program, but then alongside of it, thinking, as you pointed out, and as I think Peter had pointed out, you have a lot of reliance on contractors for outreach. I like that you're talking about some internal outreach. I would love to see somewhere in the future of Community Power creating a job in the community for someone to be that program outreach person, that educator to communities of concern, et cetera. Personally, I think that relationship with the customer is like the most important asset that you have. And it allows you, when you build that relationship and you earn that trust, that you're not just there to sell a battery or to sell a system today, you're there to advise them and help them understand what is DAC/SASH, what is all this other stuff they have to deal with to make it work, bring a lot more value. And the way it relates to this, we're talking about solar and storage as its own program. Like it's great for solar and storage, but if you were instead to think about load shift, or like if permanent load shift is the objective, maybe we don't care so much whether it comes from solar and battery or something else. There's California businesses that make thermal energy storage that you can retrofit onto a residential HVAC unit. It don't cost, I think it was Peter's point, $10,000, right? So if load shift is, maybe part of the goal, that person who has the relationship with the homeowner can say, right, what serves you better, a $10,000 battery for load shift or $500, add-on, or maybe it's a subsidized air conditioning unit. I think there's a lot of folks in San Diego that would benefit from reliable air conditioning, right? Like directly feel that benefit. So there's a lot to consider. I think this is a great program for today, and I hope it will lead to many things in the future. And I hope you'll consider doing in-house outreach to the companies.
Yeah, I think that's all great. Thank you very much for that feedback. And we are definitely exploring some thermal energy solutions right now as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Committee member Emerson and then Sandoval.
You're going to get worn out all these questions, but it's an exciting program, and thank you for your energy and information. So you had a webinar earlier the last a month, 2 of them, and did you record that by chance?
We did. We have the recording posted on YouTube. I'm happy to share that. But we just had the workshops. We didn't record any of the questioning.
I see. And then if any installer missed that, they could listen to the recording. Okay. So I'm going to send you an email later if I can get the link to that. So this a question came about owner versus renters. So yes, the owners have to be involved. The idea is that they would own the system and own the battery, not like PPA.
It could very well be a PPA.
Could be a PPA. I see.
Yeah.
And then doing outreach, presenting to city council because they know what their community is and who might going to churches, explaining the program. I think having some simple cost comparison, this would be the normal solar system.
Yep.
And this with all these incentives and in your community disadvantages, if they could, kind of like do a simple comparison, I think that visually people could like get a quick grasp and understanding, but doing outreach to even churches and city council members, I think would be great. And then I think I mentioned before, besides the typical southern facing panels, when you're going to add batteries, you really want the installers to think about east facing, west facing. And I don't know how you're gonna incorporate that, but I think that's important rather than just south facing for when you add a battery package. So maybe that could be some consideration could be added to that. Battery warranty, 10 years. What does that mean? Does that mean it has a 70% capacity at the end of 10 years? And how do they measure if it meets the warranty? That's something that I think has to be clarified in the program. And otherwise, I'm excited. And so good luck. And I think all of us will be glad to help move it forward.
Great, thank you so much for that feedback.
Member Sandoval?
Yeah, so I was just wondering about the contractors. Earlier we were told that's one of the biggest expenses they have. Are we gonna make sure that they're local contractors, that the money stays here locally, San Diego, not out of state, that type of stuff?
Yeah, we are looking for local installers that have a local address who obviously have a prevalence within our service territory. So that's a big part of it. And we do have the expectation that a majority of the incentives will go to the customer. And they'll just be discounting the customer on the overall upfront cost.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one more thing, I was looking through the care and bureau requirements, like to be able to take advantage of those programs. And you're more like not really gonna be able to afford a house when you are in those brackets. So that's just another reason why you guys should really extend, like be able to let the tenants and multifamily homes and maybe even like the HOAs do the installation of the batteries, just throwing that out there too.
Totally. Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's great feedback.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, appreciate all this wonderful feedback. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Yeah.
We will move on to that was a balance sheet. We will move on to discussion of potential agenda items for the Board of Director meetings and CAC member comments. Move on to standing items. As a reminder, the CAC may suggest agenda items for a Board of Directors meeting agenda by communicating with the CAC chair and designated SDCP staff before and or after a regular CAC meeting. If suggested at this time, there shall be no discussion or action by the CAC unless the item has been included on the CAC agenda. Do any of our CAC members have recommendations on potential items for the Board of Directors? All right, I see none. Let's move on to committee member announcements. Do any of our CAC members have items they'd like to share today? Committee member Webb?
It's a question. Okay, going back to tenants, IB is rental. I've heard 74%, 69 is probably a close
Growing up since
ballpark.
the census, yeah.
Yeah. So if a person it gets notification they have to move because the owner's selling the house, are they able to call in and give addresses of prospective places they want to move to find out if they are opted into SDCP? I'd like to ask somebody that question. Does anybody know?
Could we carry that question forward?
I didn't hear that.
Lucas.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, if, you know, okay. It's not my friend, it's me, okay? And I'm looking for a place to live, but I want.
Agendized, so if you do have that question, I think staff would be happy to talk to you, maybe on an individual level. But
I just want to make sure where I'm moving is on STCP.
Okay, yeah, I think that's more appropriate as a individual communication.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right after we adjourn.
Announcements, you said?
Yes. Member Emerson?
Hi, yes, next Wednesday, the Electric Vehicle Association is having a meeting. And, you know, often people charge in their homes, in their garage, but people who live in apartment complexes or in condominiums that have some challenges to get charging available. And next Wednesday, the Grid Alternatives is going to be doing a presentation how they can help those kind of communities for and people who want to get EVs where they live in apartments or complexes. So that's Wednesday, February the 14th at 6 o'clock at the San Diego Auto Museum in Balboa Park, if anybody is interested.
Thank you.
Pass the word.
Committee member Anderson?
Yes, this is, I think yep, I'm okay. This is tangentially related, but we've got final closing on a project that a consortium of environmental organization's been working on to permanently preserve Proctor Valley. After Sierra Club initiated several successful lawsuits against Otay Village 14, the courts held that this was would create too much greenhouse gas with vehicle miles. It would endanger people because of fire. There was poor evacuation, and it would reduce wildlands. So after two successful lawsuits at the Superior Court level and the Appellate Court level, a consortium of environmental organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Endangered Habitats League, and the Sierra Club, successfully raised $65 million to permanently preserve that property in perpetuity.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Any other committee member announcements? All right, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you everyone for being here today. We adjourn until our next regularly scheduled meeting on March 14th, 2024. We are adjourned. Thank you.